Hey guys, we're still doing trigonometry in this set of notes, but now we're shifting from the goal of finding a side length. Our goal is now going to find how many degrees an angle is. To do trigonometry though, you're still going to be reliant on having a calculator, so make sure you have that out, and let's also still double check that you are in the correct mode. So when you type in the sine of 42, just like we would have done yesterday, your calculator should be spitting out 0.6691. If you're not getting that, you are in the incorrect mode. You will need to change that. So I don't think I put that in the last video, but just to be clear, when you change a mode, ooh, that's hard to see. Again, this is the only calculator I have, but if you push, oh, I did show you last time. If you push mode, it needs to have degree highlighted in some way, so you might need to scroll over it and hit enter. Unfortunately, this is the only calculator I have here at my house. If you have a different style and you are not finding that, just Google changing mode and then type in whatever type of calculator you have. So like whatever the name is of your calculator at the top. If you have some type of phone cell device that you are using, I didn't even check, yeah, my screen, whatever is off. Sorry, yet again, not prepared to do this. If you're trying to do it on at least an Apple device, there should be a button at the bottom that just flips it from radians to degrees. If you see it saying radian, you're in the wrong mode and it's not going to work right. You need to be in degrees. It's like that. So if I was typing in, what was it? I just typed in sine of 42. So backwards calculator here, I would type in 42 and then I would push sine. That's how I can get the right answer, 0.6691. So again, just to make sure that your calculator is in the right mode, you're ready to function properly, I'm going to type in cosine of 24.5. If you type it in with me, you should be seeing 0.90996. And tangent of 59, you should see 1.66427. So make sure your calculator's in the right mode because it is essential. The nice thing about this lesson is how similar it is to the last trigonometry notes. We're still talking sine, cosine, tangent. We still have to care about the labels of opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. And we're still thinking SOHCAHTOA. The first equation will be identical. It's just how to solve the equation you get that's going to be different today. So I'm going to start the same as I did last time. I'm going to identify my right angle and then think across my right angle is my hypotenuse. So I now know I am not about to use a tangent equation because I have a hypotenuse in this problem. I need to pay attention though. This time, the angle that we're going to look for, the program we use to get these notes throws a question mark in there. We're going to call it X because it's a lot better. We're used to X for our variable, so I'm just going to write over that. And then you'll notice that this 21 is one of the sides that creates X. It's this 21 and this 24 that makes that angle, meaning it's right next to my angle. This is the adjacent leg. Across from this angle is the opposite leg. I don't need him. I'm going to use the adjacent and the hypotenuse, therefore I figured out I'm about to write a cosine equation. Your first equation is the same as yesterday. You write cosine and then you immediately write your angle. Yesterday, that was almost always a number. Today, I don't know what my angle is, so I'm going to put an X. And I'm going to set it equal to a fraction, specifically the adjacent leg over the hypotenuse. Well, my adjacent leg is 21 and the hypotenuse is 24. We basically did this exact same thing yesterday. There are several questions that just said, what's the ratio? Here's the ratio, 21 over 24. But today the question is, well, what's the variable? What's that angle? So you'll notice our goal in solving equations is to get the variable on its own. This left-hand side almost has the variable on its own. The only thing messing me up is cosine. So the instinct most kids have is, oh, let's divide by cosine and cancel it out. That's not how it works. It's not a number. Cosine is a function like multiplying or like square rooting. And so you need to do the opposite of cosine. You need to do the inverse of cosine. So what we're essentially going to do to both sides of the equal sign is literally just called cosine inverse. So I'm going to do it to the left side of my equation, and I'm going to do it to the right hand side of my equation. And I don't usually write it like this because cosine inverse and regular cosine, just like squaring and square rooting, just like adding and subtracting, they cancel each other out. So this left-hand side drops down to just an x. So x will be found by cosine inverse of 21 over 24. That's what I just wrote in an unnecessary number of times. That's what x is going to be. This is what is called calculator ready mode. I'm ready to put this in a calculator as long as I know where this is. So I need to find in my calculator a little cosine with a -1. And again, as always, it really depends on what type of calculator you're working with. Where am I? So I'm working with a poorly lit graphing calculator. Let's see if this can help. So I wanted cosine inverse of 21 over 24. So here are all my trig buttons, sine, cosine, tangent, and you'll notice right above them, sine, let's see if you can see it, sine with a -1, cosine with a -1, tangent with a -1. I want that cosine with a -1. So with these calculators, I need to push second. Some of your calculators will need to push shift first. And then I'm going to type in 21. I'm not going to use the fraction key because I'm lazy. I'm just going to put divided or over 24. So 28.9, we're going to always round these to the nearest whole number. So that 9 makes that 8 round up. We're going to say that's about 29 degrees. So before I forget that, cosine of 21 over 24 is about 29 degrees. Now, I mentioned before, I really don't like the backwards calculators, and today is really the main reason why. So if you have a backwards type calculator, please make sure you have it out so that you can figure out how this works and have a hope of doing it on the test or on the final. So remember, we wanted cosine inverse of 21 over 24. You have to type in the 21 out of 24 first. So I'm going to do 21 divided by 24. Before I can do anything, I need to say enter. I've done my division. Once I get my decimal of my fraction, my right-hand side of the equation, that fraction we made, that's when I'm going to do cosine inverse. Now you'll notice cosine inverse doesn't show up. So just like on my real calculator, I need to push second. And then I'll see cosine inverse. So I'm going to take cosine inverse of that. So as a reminder, I'm going to walk through that again. 21 divided by 24. Say I'm done with that. Then second cosine. That's how I can get my 29-degree answer. So similar, but again, I hate backwards calculators. I wish they just didn't program them like that. So I'll do one more on this video and then I'll pause and throw the next in another video. So right triangle, so I can do Pythagorean theorem if I need a side length. I can do trigonometry, sine, cosine, tangent. I'm going to start by identifying my right angle, and across from it is the hypotenuse. Since we're finding an angle, I won't use Pythagorean theorem. I'm going to use sine, cosine, or tangent. Specifically, I'm going to pay attention to this angle is created by the hypotenuse and the vertical side. I don't know what this vertical side is, but I will label it the adjacent side. It's next to my angle. 12 is not next to my angle. It's opposite. So I'm going to label it with O. So if I'm not using the adjacent and I am using the hypotenuse and the opposite, this will be one of our sine equations, SOHCAHTOA. But as soon as I write sine, I put what my angle was. So you know where I put my labels from. In this case, it happens to be an X. Sometimes, like yesterday, it'll be a number. But then I'm going to set it equal to a fraction. That fraction is going to be the opposite leg over the hypotenuse. Cross multiplying will not help. If your variable is not in the fraction, don't cross multiply. Cross multiplying is for finding a side. For finding an angle, you almost have x on its own side of the equal sign. You only need to get rid of this sign. To get rid of the sign, we do sine inverse. So again, you could think of doing it to both sides of the equation, which would cancel this out. But I can go ahead and just say, I know how to find x. It will be found by taking the sine inverse of the fraction 12 out of 16. That's my calculator ready mode. That's what I will need to figure out how to put into my calculator. So again, some of you start in this part. Do your 12 over 16 first and then sine inverse. For some of you, just go ahead and find second sign or shift sign and then type in 12 over 16. My calculator is saying 48.59. Again, I'm going to round these to the nearest degree and just say about 49. So, like I said, really similar to yesterday.